If you look at this picture, it's the tale of two studios. You have Xbox on the other side that has this Fable franchise that came out with a preview that kind of shocked people with the overall aesthetic look. That is the antithesis of what we see, at least in the Eastern world, where we have a studio Shift Up that is developing a game that has a almost beautiful aesthetic that people have been missing from video games for the past decade. In the comparison to these two studios, you can just look at the developers working on each game. You just look at the developers of Xbox. It kind of reminds you of that Twitter photo of before Elon Musk bought Twitter and then after Elon Musk bought Twitter. That picture is showed a whole staff of people filled up with a lot of female workers, which is okay, but when you think about the overall function of Twitter before, it was something that was untenable, unusable, and overall just something that wasn't friendly to anyone that was expressing any sort of opinion that was opposing that political activist stance that is held by Twitter. Now you have current day Twitter where everyone's able to express themselves, and I think that's what we see with the current makeup of Xbox developers, where they're restricted in the singular thought process that they can't get out of. And you look at the studio of developers, the people they want to highlight, it looks like the people that just want to control a message and deliver a message to the video game audience. And then you look at the Shift Up developers, it's predominantly men focused on developing a game. Of course, this is just framing. They took a photo while they were working. They didn't take a group smiling photo, but I think that is the case here, where we see the quality of certain things change with the dynamics of people working on it. And not to say there's no great female developers, but I think the focus in these studios nowadays is not about talent. It's about the overall gender balance of the people working on the project rather than the project itself. And I think that it lends itself to poor quality outcomes, which we're seeing with the Fable series and a sequel that is supposed to come out, and people already have been trashing it based on the trailer they released. And I think just seeing Korea and Shift Up grab the attention of the entire video game industry with this new game. If you don't know what I'm talking about Stellar Blade, which is slated to come out around April. It's exclusive on PS5. They paid more money for it, unfortunately, for the people that don't have a PS5, but it is grabbing the attention of gamers all over the world based on its looks. And this is something that video games used to do for us, where it grabbed our attention based on its looks and it pulled us in. And I think that is the missing art that is being expressed here in these Eastern games, something that we've seen consistently in the past from Japanese games and developers, something that's happening less so in Japan, at least at a decreasing rate. If you see what's going on with the investment banks and the Western investment influence that is changing the video game industry in Japan ever so slightly, but that hasn't happened to Korea, and Korea is sticking by the Eastern beauty standards in its game, and you see it in Stellar Blade with the overall looks of the female characters. This is none of the ugly stereotypes that we have been seeing with Western games or the jokes we heard from Japanese or Korean when it comes to video games from the Western world, where a lot of the characters are ugly. You just look at what happened to the Fable heroine, where Japanese netizens were just roasting it and were just saying typical American standards, they have to make all the females ugly. And I think that is something that the world, at least the video game world in Asia, perceives what Americans do with their characters currently in the Western world. And this is something that's new, that just started happening in the past 6-7 years with these characters. And of course the influence comes in with these consultancy firms, these political activists, these journalists that are political activists that want to implement their message in video games, and they have successfully done so, where we're seeing the degradation of the overall look aesthetic of characters, specifically female characters in the video game space. And I think this picture sums up the two studios right there, where you have this overly focus on political activism, just people wearing their politics on their shirt, where it's pretty obvious what they stand for. And I think that is the situation that we're seeing overall in the Western developer sphere, where it is more about politics than actual very good gameplay and good aesthetics. And I think that focus that we see at Shift Up, the developer, is something that we see lacking everywhere else in the video game industry. And I think that is something that is looking to change a little bit, and you can have that comparison right there with the way Shift Up treats its development process, where they've been called out for firing a lot of female political activists in their developing group. This is a quote from a person that was fired, who was a staunch feminist activist that was working on the development of this game, where she said they fired her because of her views. And I'm like, whoa, this is something you would never hear in a Western developed game. A Western developer that's working on a game, they can't do that. There's a whole host of laws that will come into play. There's going to be lawsuits, but in this case, they said, no, you don't share our values, get out of here, walk out the door. And this is something I would expect to happen if you're disrupting the overall development of the game. You're fighting and arguing with the creator's vision, where they wanted aesthetically pleasing women in the game. That just points to a solidarity of vision that exceeds anything that we've been seeing in the Western world and the developers that have been working on video games. And here they're firing employees for that case. Of course, people are calling for boycotts, and typically when it comes to these releases of these games, everyone is pointing towards the male gaze as being something toxic and that should be eliminated, when in actuality people don't share this point of view when it comes to the muscular figures of like Tekken characters and any other fighting game. They don't apply that same, oh, women gaze needs to be eliminated, it's toxic. No, only the male gaze. And it comes back to the point that these are political activists that are coming from standpoints that even prefer different genders that are not male, so they're imposing their own specific dislike for the male gaze because they don't like males. So it's just a mixture of personal vendettas and politics where it's being exposed into the video game space. And I think that is the problem with a lot of the hires that are happening in Western developed space, where they bring in people that don't like the games, don't like the audience that plays the games, but they want these people to actually help the development of the story and the overall look of the game. That's where we get consultancy groups like Sweet Baby Inc. that have ruined multiple games, like the Kill the Justice League game, like Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, and a whole bunch of other games that have come out that have been watered down and washed out of any personality and overall look and appeal that would have drawn in a fan base at a stronger pace. And I think that is the failure of these companies, of focusing on pleasing a base of fans that don't really care about your game and hiring a base of people that don't care about producing for the fans that like your game. And I think that is the difference of the developers we have with the Korean side, Shift Up, where they're focused on bringing something that the fans actually love and enjoy. This is the model of the main character Eve, where they're choosing aesthetically realistic looking women. This is a woman that looks exactly the model, and she brought it to life. That effort of bringing that design to real life is showing the overall focused vision of the game and how it's coming to life, and people are getting excited about it for many different reasons. If you look at the model, they did a good job of bringing her to life. They're excited about the gameplay as well. I think that is the essential thing, where you're making something that is exciting the fans, at least the gameplay wise. I'm not just talking about the look of the model. People are making fun of that too, saying, oh, this is just a lotion type of game, and no guy is bringing out lotion to play a video game. It's just gonna grab their attention to play the game. And I think that's what you want to do with your game. Grab the attention of a person and get them to play the game. And having a beautiful woman on the cover and being a playable character, you got someone's attention. And that's the opposite of what we're seeing in the Western development space. We're making super ugly women that's pushing away men's gazes, and they're not playing your game anymore. It's such a simple thing that you would expect Western developers to understand this, but that's not the case. You have critics still criticizing this game, saying, oh, anyone that likes these female characters, they have evil thoughts and need to be imprisoned. This is one quote here from a guy on Twitter, where they're just saying that, where I'm like, no, this is just the male gaze. Every advertising and marketing agency for the past 70 to 80 years knew this was the case. If you have pretty women, aesthetically pleasing people in the advertisement or in the core focus of a entertainment property, people will go see it. And that's just basic advertising, marketing, and creating a sellable product. And that's what they're doing at Shift Up. But that is a lost art in America. But this is a tale of two developers going different paths, and I already know which one is going to be more successful. You tell me, do you think Fable will be more successful than Stellar Blade? I doubt that's the case, but maybe you have a different opinion. Leave a like, comment, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.